the Spirit, fullest control.
I'm Mike Costello, and I'm with Dr. Iris Freelander, and we're going to talk to you in the next few minutes about holistic healing. All of us have heard a great deal about it, and from our perspective, from New Thought and metaphysical religious beliefs, holistic healing, that is the mind, body, and spirit connection, are tremendously important to what we believe and tremendously empowering to all people. And so we'll spend the next few minutes talking about these concepts. I guess healing is of interest to everyone, isn't it, Iris?
Yes, indeed. And more doctors are using holistic healing, or they might call it alternative healing. And I know several doctors whom I know have been saying that, and probably you know doctors who are doing it too.
Absolutely. And the use of alternative therapies, I notice now very often are also being called complementary therapies, where people are using the alternative therapies together with conventional therapies to have wonderful results. Before we talk about healing, maybe we should just talk about holistic health.
Yes.
Because we're all concerned about also maintaining our health. And we all believe, at least in our movement and in our circle, we believe in the value of a holistic approach to living in general. And so while some of us may be sick now and have illnesses or diseases, and certainly most of us will have illnesses from time to time in our lives, we're all faced with the challenge of maintaining our health. And having a holistic approach to health is important, and connecting the mind, body, and spirit. And so I guess we could start with talking about the mind connection, and in maintaining our health or our wellness or our well-being, that importance of our mind and the way we think is so important, isn't it?
Yes, and I'm sure that all the doctors would tell us, that all the doctors I've talked with, and I've talked with many about this, say that that is one of the most important factors. And just for one extra item, most doctors say too that they pray when they're working with their patients. I think that's very wonderful, and that they're in a prayerful, thoughtful way. Now, not all doctors are, I know, but most do. And the doctors who are using alternative healing or holistic or complementary healing are having wonderful results with it. So uh, their thinking, their mindset is to use more and more of that, because they know that the mind has so much to do with the healing of the patient. And we know that it does. They've used placebos for years, and they found with those that very often it does have an effect, and of course not always.
Mm-hmm. And of course, as we use prayer, both for wellness or for maintaining our health and for healing our disease or our illness, it does things to our body. And science is now beginning to gather data, and physicians are beginning to understand, and studies are being conducted to show that there's a real physiological change in the body based upon meditation and prayer.
That's true, and many tests have been made. The first I heard of was about 30 or 35 years ago. I heard about Dr. Cherry Parker, who was not a medical doctor but a professor at University of Redlands, and he had his psychology class divide into two groups, and they prayed for each other by twos, and then they prayed for each other by group, and they had wonderful results with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so exciting that the medical doctors are now acknowledging this and are using it in that way, and will continue with healing more fully, I believe, as a result, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that today the public is very receptive to alternative modalities and the use of alternative therapies, including prayer and meditation. And I think it's a little difficult sometimes for mainline scientific types of physicians and doctors and practitioners and other healthcare professionals to embrace the concept. But I think there are certainly more of it today than there has been, and more acceptance of it today than there has been.
Yes, well, of course, you know, too, at the church, at our church, Christ Church, we do the spiritual healing work during every service. We pray for healing, and we've had phenomenal success with many patients, and certainly not with all patients for absolute healing, but who knows how much help those prayers have given those people for whom we've prayed, who have had to seek medical help too. And of course, we'd never tell anyone not to seek medical help. It's an auxiliary effort, not the whole effort. And it's so wonderful that there's so many new ways of alternative healing, but they all go back to older days. They're not so new. They're just now being accepted as more new.
Or they're coming around again
Right.
in the way that people think. And of course, nutrition is a big issue that we see today in the mind, body, spirit, and talking about the body itself, or the body temple, which we believe is so important to the spiritual being because it houses the real us, the inner
Yes.
person that we are. And so the nurturing of that temple body, or body temple, is so important. And we do that beginning with the food that we eat.
Exactly. And I know I'm a good example of that because when I was 50 years old, I was quite ill. I was having a lot of different problems. And I couldn't lift the heavy bedspread on my bed, for example, because sometimes I would just sit down and cry because I was so fatigued and my body was not functioning very well. But I didn't have a specific illness. But I went to a nutritionist who gave me a program to follow, and I followed it because I needed help. And it was an exercise program and a diet nutrition. And so now at age 71, I'm healthier and stronger and more viable than I was at age 50. And it's thanks to following that program in large measure. And I've seen many other people have the same effect. And I wouldn't like to talk about myself very much, but I think that's important to bring out for our audience that I know from personal experience how important that aspect is. I've seen it happen with lots and lots of people. And I know a young man who had a spinal curvature, developed a spinal curvature at age 11. The doctors observed it. And the doctors said, the orthopedic surgeon said, the only thing we could do, that the parents could do, would be watch the diet and make sure the child got plenty of exercise. And so he still developed the curvature. So it's not a cure-all, but it's helpful. And who knows how much healthier that young man is because his parents did observe a good nutrition for him and made sure that he exercised and got plenty of playing sports and the activities that a young person would do. So we have to take into account all those various things, and each person is an individual. So we each need an individualized approach to health. And some people run, like I know you run. Well, I walk instead. And we all have to have the program that fits our needs best of all. And so as we work out our own program, we can ask our body, what do you need? And our body's answer.
It's a very important issue, and I think so many people don't give it much thought. And we should probably really emphasize the fact that we believe and we teach this reality that our bodies will speak to us
Yes.
and will crave the things that they need, and that really comes from the divine presence within us that is speaking outwardly to our physical being. And if we'll just center ourselves, and often we do need help from, as you said years ago, when you worked with a nutritionist or an exercise specialist or someone who can work with our diet. But very often it depends upon our body itself telling us what it needs. And we'll often have a craving. Unfortunately, we develop cravings for things that we ought not to have from the standpoint of nutrition.
That's true.
And so many times people acquire tastes through childhood or through any time of their life where there are some really hollow calories and destructive foods that are taken into the body. And probably the greatest example of that is what we see today as this kind of snack foods,
Yeah.
potato chips and these high fat and really nutritionally flat kinds of dietary intakes that we make that are not at all divinely inspired. And I think if we go back to the issue of holistic health, and we talk about holistic health as being the whole person, and we talk about each of us being physical and mental and spiritual, but beyond that, in the midst of this whole process, we have the ability to draw out the things that we need and to have the things that we need provided to us. And if we really think about it in life, God provides us with everything that we need. And so basically, if we look at food, the food that we need are the foods that come to us naturally.
Yeah.
and not those that are manufactured. And those that are manufactured, we have to be cautious of what the manufacturing process does to them. And an example is simply just fruits and vegetables. You know, so many of us have access to fruits and vegetables, and yet we don't eat them in large amounts. And a lot of people like organic things, and certainly that has strength. But just replacing fruits and vegetables with replacing other things with fruits and vegetables, and taking in more of this nutritious, natural food that comes from the earth or comes from the bounty of God is really strengthening to our physical bodies.
Yes, and the scientists have told us that the food that grows in our own area is most healthful for us. Well, if we want a rounded diet, we have to buy green fruits and vegetables that are grown in other areas at certain times of the year. But we could keep that in mind and try to get those that we all grown in our own area, all possible. And of course, the organic food is much better for us if we can get it grown locally than it would be organically grown as a rule. And all those different things, we just have to be thoughtful about it. And there are other modalities too. My next door neighbor, who's a medical doctor, gave me some information on magnets that the medical doctors are using. And I think that's very fascinating because those of us in the holistic field have known for years that magnets are very helpful health-wise. I have a friend whose back goes out if she doesn't wear the magnets close to her skin in her clothing on her back, because her back gives her a problem without the magnets. And then when and she thinks it's crazy, but I don't think it's crazy. It balances her aura. It balances the magnetic, meridians of her body, which is the magnetic balance in our connection with the earth and the magnetic earth meridians. So the doctors are using magnets in various ways, as the holistic people have known for years.
And the interesting thing is that those physicians that are using them use them and may use them in conjunction with traditional therapies as well.
Yes,
So,
that's correct. And then there are those electrical boxes that are powered by batteries, and they've been used for many years. Nikola Tesla and other doctors long ago, or scientists, he was a physicist, discovered that we can put the electricity on the body and it balances out the electrical circuits of the body. And now more and more of that is being done. And I think we can give credit to Nikola Tesla for having brought through that information most fully. And then other doctors are working and physicists are working off his maps and his information.
and then seeing the results of so many of these alternative and complementary therapies gives validity to them. And so often in medical science, we want empirical data,
Yes.
and we want studies, and we want other things. And certainly in science, that makes good sense. And it makes sense in many circles. But the reality is that there are many things in this universe that we don't understand, and that we certainly don't understand fully at this point in time. And at another point in time, perhaps they'll be understood more fully and more completely. But there are many things that we know that do wonderful things that for many, many years people have made claims about that certainly couldn't have done and didn't do any harm, but did tremendous good. And one that we can think of that there's still a great deal of debate about has to do with of supplements such as vitamin C and the value of vitamin C. And yet in today's environment, we still see physicians and other scientists who will say, oh, vitamin C has no value. And yet the huge majority of the population has come to understand, because of their own experience, that the value of vitamin C in terms of healing and wellness and wholeness is tremendous. And that's not to say that it cures everything. And I think we need to be cautious about that and say that none of the things that we're talking about are true for everyone at every time. And I think one of the things that is interesting to me is that as people explore alternative therapies and as people explore conventional therapies, there are people for whom a conventional therapy will work beautifully. And for instance, a cancer may be treated with radiation and eradicated. Someone else may be treated with radiation and get deathly ill, have no improvement, and then go on a grape diet, for instance. And I'm just saying that that's one, and have tremendous results. Someone else would go on a grape diet and not have those tremendous results, but may try something else, macrobiotics or some nutritional supplement or some medical program. And I think the thing that becomes clearer to me is that it doesn't really matter as much what it is that we're doing that works for us in our health, as much as something prompts us to create a change in our life, and that change requires us to change in many other areas. And so this process of change brings about the holistic healing, and change is growth.
Right.
And so I don't know that, I do know that we put too much emphasis on some of the types of cures and types of preventions that we use, all of which are good. But it may not be that particular thing that is the causation of the good result, but instead it is the beginning point of the changes that take place to bring about the manifestation of health, wellness, and wholeness, and healing, even if healing is what we need.
Exactly. And you mentioned vitamin C. Dr. Linus Pauling has shown unequivocally that the vitamin C does work, and many medical doctors honor that now. And Dr. Caroline Mace is a wonderful researcher who's worked with a doctor out of the Midwest, and she's discovered that you can discern where the chakras are. We know the force centers in the human body, the chakras are located over the 7 major endocrine glands. Well, she has elaborated on that so greatly and given far more information. And she's shown that there's 2 things people need to do in order to be healed. One is bring back your spirit. If you left your spirit somewhere somewhere else, then we need to bring it back to ourselves and use it thus. And the other is forgiveness. If there's someone we've not forgiven, then we're not going to be healed, she's found. But if they forgive, they can be healed. And there was one woman who attended a doctor, it's Dr. Norm Shealy that she works with, who founded the Holistic Health Association. And he was a Harvard graduate and works out of a clinic in Missouri. I believe it's Missouri, it's the Midwest. And so he found there was a woman who had cancer so bad that she was dying. She needed to be in a hospice. She had to be carried on a stretcher into his workshop. And during the middle of that workshop, about Wednesday of a week-long workshop, she stood up, thanked them for their help, and went home. And she told Dr. Shealy later that she had to forgive her husband, who had been unfaithful to her all their married life. But she decided she loved him, wanted to stay married to him, and it wouldn't have mattered to who he had been married to. He still would have been unfaithful. It had nothing to reflect against her. So she forgave him, and she healed. She picked him up at the airport 6 months later, and he asked her, what was the factor? What was that he really wanted to know? Because it was very important that he help with other patients in that way. And she told him that it was just that she had forgiven, and she was healed. And she came home and continued healing. And the doctors then, 6 months later, could find no trace of cancer in her body. Now, that goes along with what you were just saying. Some people might not have that total, complete healing. They might have a remission. They might not have a healing. But if they do in their heart forgive, they would probably have the healing.
Yeah, for the need to forgive circumstances, situations, people, and ourselves.
Yeah.
And the other is the very valuable mental tool to holistic healing is to avoid the occasion of negative thought.
Yes.
And negative thoughts of hate, of envy, of defeat, all of the negative aspects of life, but especially these horrifically deadly thoughts. And just as you're saying, the unforgiving spirit or the unforgiving thought, the hatefulness of people or circumstances or situations, these are just deadly to both the physical body, to the mental state and the emotions, and to the spiritual being as well.
Exactly.
And if we begin that process of purging ourselves of this unforgiveness and purging ourselves of hate and the darker aspects of life, then we begin to set in motion the reality that allows us to be well, number one, or to be healed if we are sick.
Yes, and those doctors in the holistic movement know that the basic factor is the immune system. And if we're exercising those negative thoughts, as you just described, then we're depressing our immune system. And if we have a positive attitude, our immune system is accelerated and works. And of course, the thymus gland governs the immune system. And the thymus gland is located just under the heart chakra. And you can do various things, like tapping on your thymus gland. That helps to activate it. And of course, our thoughts have more to do with it than anything else. But as we try to heal, as we work toward healing, then we have to remember to work with the thymus gland, and that's the important thing, work with our immune system.
And that immune system is so sensitive to our thoughts and our emotions.
Exactly.
And if we go back to what we spoke about a few minutes ago in the talk that we're having about prayer and meditation,
Yeah.
we know what happens to our circulatory system and actual changes in the blood that affect the white blood cells when we pray and meditate, so that we stimulate the natural immune system that is defending our cell bodies from all of those very harmful issues of life and harmful presences. Cancer is a reality for all of us.
Yeah.
But what happens in the cases of those who have rampant cancers is that those cancer cells begin to replicate, begin to reproduce at such a rapid rate that they eat up the good cells. We see the same thing in AIDS. We see the same things in all kinds of immune deficiency diseases, when that immune system isn't able to fight anymore because it is just overwhelmed with the inability to deal with what's going on in the body.
Yes, and as you said, our thoughts have more power over that than anyone would ever dream possible. And also, when we are calm in meditation, or as you said, then our blood is cleansed because we are deep breathing, and that's one of the most important things. Deep breathing is so important. It needs to be stressed more and more, because as we breathe deeply and inhale the oxygen, the prana of Earth's atmosphere, then it connects with the magnetic earth energy and cleanses and purifies our body. And of course, the ductless glands take the poisons out of the body. And if we have the proper oxygen content in our body, then the ductless glands work better. Then the toxins are eliminated. And that's one of the ways that holistic medicine works, because it cleanses, we cleanse our ductless glands and stimulate the 7 major ductless glands.
And as we do that, the oxygen goes into our body. It empowers the cells and infuses the blood with life force, and it flows through our entire being.
Yes. And so the doctors are all working now. I think they're working together more than ever before, don't you? I know there are hospitals that have alternative care divisions, and I know that you probably know of those too.
We work with a hospital that does that. Hospitals and physicians are very cautious about alternative therapies. You know, I think it's because they're afraid of getting a reputation for being a kind of quackery or harboring quackery. But there's more and more reality within mainstream medicine of the alternative therapies.
I know, and it's a wonder. I find it very exciting. I know I was in Kentucky a few years, 5 years ago, and I developed a horrible cold. I'd flown back and forth from California to Kentucky a couple of times in fairly quick succession, and I think people get bad colds because they don't get fresh air in the airplanes. Well, in any event, I had the flu and a bad cold. I don't know what you call it, but I felt wretched. So I went to an osteopath who was my family doctor, and I said to him, I want you to do something for me. And if I were in California, my doctor, who is a chiropractor, would put his thumb back in my throat and press a certain way in the back of my throat, and then I would be healed. He said, I can do that. And I said, please do. So he pressed, and I felt immediate relief from the coughing and the stuffiness. And I said, why don't you do that with all your patients? That's wonderful. And he said they would think I'm a quack if I did. And so, but it worked. And of course, the osteopaths do have that training. And if they would use it more people would benefit.
But the hesitancy is to do anything that's not considered mainstream.
Yes.
And so that's very difficult for so many people. It goes much against the grain for all of us in religion who are involved in healing to pray for the sick, because there are many churches that don't involve themselves in a healing ministry, because they believe that's not within the purview of the church. And of course, we believe that that is fundamentally within the purview of the church.
Exactly. To me, it's so unbelievable. I know years ago, I knew a doctor, 30 years ago, I knew a minister who would not make house calls on people who were ill, and he hated doing memorial services. And I know you enjoy doing memorial services, and the reason you enjoy them, I assume, is because you are so uplifting for the family that's grieving. And what better service can we give than to help people who are grieving?
Absolutely, absolutely. And these healing ministries just touch lives in so many wonderful ways. And as we said earlier, we're not suggesting that people shouldn't seek medical advice or shouldn't take medications, but we do believe that by connecting the spiritual aspect with the physical aspect of life, and that we can heal all of the aspects of our being, which is mind, body, and spirit. And we
Exactly.
can keep those life centers centered in health and wellness, which is the goal of all of us.
It's very exciting that the doctors are doing that. Just last week, I had to go to my medical doctor and tell him I need an adjustment on my back. And he gave me an adjustment, and my back stopped hurting immediately. So he's an osteopath too. I'm with an HMO. And I find it so exciting that an HMO has a doctor on staff who's able to do that. And I could just walk into the immediate care facility, and he was able to do that. And I had walked for a short time, and my back hurt really bad. But after his treatment, it didn't hurt anymore. And that was about 10 days ago, and it's felt wonderful since then.
It's tremendous that physicians at all levels and healthcare professionals and clergy and individual people of all walks of life are relying more upon their personal responsibility, are believing more in, and are more open to the reality that there are a variety of modalities that can bring us healing, wellness, and wholeness, and that we're all opening ourselves to these wonderful ideas. And during the last few minutes, Dr. Freelander and I have been sharing these concepts about holistic healing, the connection of mind, body, and spirit. We hope that you found this information useful. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Rights every wrong. Dynamic power helps me be strong. Confident living comforts my heart. From such a blessing I can't depart. Confident living helps me expand visions of value, the kingdom at hand. Confident living, talent to win, gift of the spirit, moves from within.